Game of Thrones has finally come to an end after 8 seasons, but the finale has left its fans pretty divided. Here to break it down for us is Entertainment Weekly's senior digital news editor, Jessica Derschowitz, and Aziz and Ashaya from the History of Westeros podcast. Thank you all for joining us.
All right, so much to break down. Let's get right into it. The climactic moment, some would say the anticlimactic moment. Jon Snow killed the love of his life, the Khaleesi, to save Westeros from madness. Jessica, your reaction to that starting?
I had a feeling that was going to happen, but it was still pretty surprising to see. You build up to this whole thing. DANY takes this turn towards madness, and it becomes clear that she's not going to stop now that she's taken King's Landing. It's just going to be the next thing and the next thing.
Just a growing beast.
Yes, exactly, and more people are going to die. And Jon Snow is he's a good guy, and as much as he loved her, he just could not let that happen.
He's honorable. At the end of the day, he will always serve the greater good, right?
Right, exactly, even if that means murder.
Yeah, right. Aziz and Ashaya, did you see this coming? What'd you think?
I mean, it's long been predicted, the idea of Jon, we call it Nissa-Nissaing Daenerys, the idea of him stabbing her through the heart. It did feel like it happened so quickly, and Jon himself, he doesn't feel like a hero for it. He's very broken up about doing this, and he says it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, ultimately it's a tragedy. People have been rooting for Daenerys for 8 straight seasons, only to have her turn villain very quickly, and that was jarring for a lot of folks. But for a lot of other people, they thought it was surprising, an interesting twist, the kind of thing that you don't see on TV. They praised the bold choice of it, and it's very unique for TV, so you got to give them credit for taking a risk.
You have one meltdown and burn the city to the ground, and then you have this down to the heart. Okay. All right. I thought Drogon was going to burn Jon to ashes after this. Instead, he takes his wrath out on the Iron Throne. Aziz and Ashaya, did you like that spin, and why do you think that Drogon did that?
I, for one, very much like them destroying the Iron Throne. I've long wanted the Iron Throne to be destroyed, even if, ultimately someone does still control the 6 kingdoms now. I thought they would be fractured. And as for him attacking Jon or not, I think he can clearly sense how sad and broken up Jon is about this, if you can see how intelligent Drogon is. So it makes perfect sense for me that Drogon didn't kill him.
Yeah, it's very symbolic that the child of Daenerys recognized this symbol as something that was a pursuit that she maybe shouldn't have had, something that ruined her, that maybe broke her brain, perhaps you could say. That's maybe not the right choice of words, but maybe in his dragon mind, that's what he was thinking.
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, Jessica, what about the moment Drogon is nudging Daenerys? It's kind of like trying to wake her up. It was emotional. Did that tug on the heartstrings for you?
It definitely did. You think about like a child, like he is her son, and it's just like, oh, this is what happened to you. Like, are you okay? And then there's that realization that she's not, and that leads to him picking her up and flying her off to parts unknown.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Does anyone have any clue where Drogon took her body? Do you have a guess?
Some guesses might be Valyria, which was like the ancestral home of the Targaryens, but who knows?
Cliffhanger.
But you guys agree with that?
Valyria, yeah. Specifically because we have seen Drogon in Valyria in the show, specifically in the past. So that's one thing.
When he flew off from Daenerys the first time, that's where he went, so it makes sense.
By the way, there's so many little nuggets that are like, okay, the next chapter, whenever the spinoff comes out, we're going to find out all these things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Tyrion. A lot of people thought he was going to die. Jessica, you surprised by the survival?
He's a cunning guy. It looked like he was painted into a corner. Like, he's been on trial for murder and for scheming all these other times and has gotten off scot-free. And
he can always talk his way out, or deal his way out, wheel and deal.
He's a very good statesman, which is why he's survived so long in this Game of Thrones. And it really looked like it was going to happen. But this was Peter Dinklage's Emmy moment. Like, him telling Jon that as much as it kills him to do this, that he needs to murder the woman he loves, and he lays out the case for why she's irredeemable and why he has to go through with this. And it's a really masterful scene between the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. Aziz and Ashaya, how important was Tyrion and Jon's talk for how things panned out?
He was really speaking to the audience, I think. He was explaining why it had to be. As much as he was explaining it to Jon, he was speaking to the fans, saying, look, this is how it is. This is what's going to happen. These are going to be the consequences. It's painful for you, Jon. It's painful for us fans. Yeah. But this is how it has to be. And I totally agree. It was a really amazing moment. The acting was off the charts, as always. Something that Game of Thrones has always been just perfect with, is the acting, and they really nailed it here in the final moments.
Yeah, when you have to think that they knew they had to give it their all for this final episode. How about one of the most conclusive, big developments, all hail Bran the Broken. Did you see this coming?
I don't know if anybody really did.
No, I don't think so.
When people were laying out their like fan favorites, who they thought was going to end up on the Iron Throne, you would think Sansa, maybe Jon, maybe DANY.
He was way down the list.
I was surprised, but when we got into it, I can see why he ended up being the right choice now. The thing that DANY always said she wanted to do was break the wheel, and she didn't get to do that. But in the aftermath of her very, very, very short tenure as the Queen of Westeros, we end up with this not democratically elected, but sort of representational monarchy, and he is somebody who doesn't want to rule, which makes him the right ruler.
Yeah.
I'm just not a Bran fan, so maybe that's why I didn't like the finale, because I'm like, Bran of all people. Aziz and Ashaya, what were your thoughts on Bran? I mean, also, it seems like that maybe he wanted the throne all along, but he's able to act cool because he kind of conceded. He
knew what would happen.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people wanted one final shot of the Night King's eyes opening on, on Bran. We didn't, but it was a common theory enough. And while I don't think either of us has ever been thinking that Bran would end up on the throne, going back to the beginning of the books or anything like that, it makes sense. And obviously now that the finale's happened, we're going to have to dive in and figure that out. But there is precedent for this sort of council event. They've had great councils in the past where they had to decide who was going to be king. And so they're
kind of made sense in that light that they came to the spot. Well, who's going to be king now?
Well,
and when we were thinking about how this might play out, we guessed that if Daenerys was killed and Jon doesn't want the throne, then where would they go from there? And like y'all said at the beginning, the cast has been reduced so much. You just kind of look at every single character and say, well, could that person be king?
Right.
What about Davos? Okay, well, what about Bronn? And then eventually you get to Bran, and it's funny to think about Daenerys wanted to break the wheel. Well, she never got to Bran's chair, thankfully.
Yeah. Sansa, now the Queen of the North. What are we thinking about that, Jessica?
That was probably one of my favorite moments of the whole series. At the very end, when you see her getting crowned, and she's wearing that beautiful dress, and everyone's chanting "Queen in the North."
She looks so fierce.
She is very much her father's daughter, but also has this wonderful independent streak all her own. And you can see, like, she just wanted the North is very independent. She wanted to lead it, and her subjects are excited for that.
Also, visually, it was like this really great culmination,
also because
right?
when she started on this show, some people kind of saw her as a weaker character, and then to see her in that powerful position, that kind of gave me chills. That was one of my favorite moments. Aziz and Ashaya, why do you think no one else, especially the Iron Islands, stayed independent after the North chose to remain independent? What are your thoughts on that?
Iron Islands were my big question. I was like, during that council, you'd think Yara would have said something, or maybe she felt like they didn't quite earn it as much. She went off and did her own thing.
Maybe
I
they'll
also
make a move
think,
later.
that is what I was really thinking, is that Yara takes a look at Arya, she takes a look at Sansa, she's like, I'm just gonna rebel later.
Yeah.
Gonna consider it first.
6 kingdoms will go down to 5 kingdoms.
Yeah, right.
On the next spinoff.
Yeah, on the next spinoff. So let's talk about this.
Prince Thorne.
Jon returns to the North, gets a reunion with Ghost. Jessica, did you like how Jon's story kind of wrapped up?
I think that's the big reunion everyone was waiting for, right? I mean, like, everything else aside, when Ghost went off and Jon didn't even get to give him a little pat on the head, people were really upset.
Yeah.
And you get that kind of closure together. He got sent back up to the North beyond the Wall, and he got to go off with Tormund and the Free Folk, and with Ghost along with them.
That CGI money coming through there. Finally. And Arya going west of Westeros. She's always been a free spirit. Kind of makes sense. Any guesses on what she finds, Aziz and Ashaya?
Yeah, actually, in Fire and Blood, which is the most recent book in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is a history book, there is a character, Alyssa Farman, who goes west of Westeros, and you get some reports of some islands that she comes across. And I won't spoil you guys if you choose to read this book, but let's just say that George has been writing in characters with parallels to the main series, and I think in this character we're seeing an inspiration for Arya Stark.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Let's talk about this. It doesn't look like any of the Starks are going to meet each other ever again. Who was wiping away the tears at the Stark farewell?
Out of the characters?
Yeah.
I think that I was really touched by Arya and Jon saying goodbye to one another. I think those were 2 characters that we were so excited to see together again this season, and now everyone's going their separate ways again, and that was really unfortunate.
It's kind of tearing,
Yeah.
a little bit,
a little
right?
bit.
All right, well, looking back now, overall, are you guys satisfied with how Game of Thrones ended? Let's start with you guys, Aziz and Ashaya.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up for
Really?
me.
You guys are happy with it? Okay.
I'm satisfied. There are things that I was dissatisfied with, as there are in pretty much any episode of most media. But overall, I think that the ending story beats are where they're going to end up and are poetic and meaningful.
Absolutely, and of course, as an experience, the Game of Thrones was really fun to talk week to week for 8 to 9 years, and we made a lot of friends along the way. The real Game of Thrones are the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. So yeah, Starbucks cups and water bottles aside. You're still on board. Jessica, how about for you?
You know, like if we're talking about the final episode, there were things I liked about it and things I didn't. It's impossible to make a finale that's going to make everybody happy.
No, right.
It's just, and especially with a show like this where there isn't any like one main villain to vanquish. You're being left with some ambiguous things. But the series as a whole, I think we're not going to find anything like this for a long time.
I was so glad because I caught up for the season.
Did
so I
you?
got to watch it in real time. Yeah, so it was a real treat after having binged the other season. So I had a great time watching along with everyone and going on social media.
It is truly appointment television in an era where our viewing habits are so fragmented now.
Right.
It was so communal, having everyone come together every Sunday night, react on social media, talk about it the next morning.
That's probably the saddest part to let go.
Well, yeah, because it feels like it's going to be a long time before we have another show like this.
Everyone's
so
gotta coalesce
I had
around
a
some
blast.
other-
Before we let you guys go, we asked our viewers which major death they think deserves a redo in our People poll. So let's take a look at this.
Results.
I vote
in-
Cersei.
here we go.
Yes.
Cersei, yeah.
I wanted Cersei to have a much more satisfying death.
And then Daenerys came in second. There we have a couple. Oh, Lord.
Tywin Lannister.
Wow, Tywin. Wow.
Hot pie.
I think he didn't
He
die.
didn't die.
I know. Well, they want him to die, apparently.
It's like should have.
Well, I want to know with you guys, was there a death that you would want to redo? Aziz and Ashaya.
That is a very good question. I chose Jamie for your poll. That's the death I wanted to have a slightly differently, which kind of implies Cersei has a different death too, I suppose, but that's who I chose.
I was hoping that maybe they weren't actually crumbled by the rocks, because you didn't like fully see them die the last episode. Because Cersei was my favorite character, so I was really.
Well, and in this series, like any little window of possibility for them to
you never
survive,
know.
you never
They
know.
really,
It's almost
maybe
like
they
they're
were
doing it on
like still
purpose.
trapped under there, so but they were.
Did you
I guess I'll
what-
go with Night King. I'll go with
Night King, okay.
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
Just give us another episode or two more. Make it a little bit of a longer night.
Sure.
Yeah, but a little later, so we can actually watch what's going on.
I do wish that Jamie and Cersei had gone out a different way, but it almost was fitting in the nature of the show. You survive all of these other assassination attempts and coups, and then you just die under a pile of rubble.
In some ways poetic, in other ways
A
disappointing.
little bit.
Yeah.
I wish that when he left Winterfell to go back to her, I'm not the only one, but a lot of people were thinking, oh, he's going to go and like finish her by his own hand. And it was like, no, he's going